So we're going to be painting tonight. Everything we have here you can get at michaels.com. We've also got John here tonight who's going to be answering your questions live. So if you have any questions, make sure you ask them in the comments, and John will be relaying them to me. So John, you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining tonight. Thank you to Michaels for having us. We definitely appreciate it. We are going to be doing a fun painting tonight. Jessie is an amazing teacher, which you will see. And in just about an hour, she will have you painting a beautiful painting. One of the things that I'm excited to say is that from all of the comments that we received tonight during the live stream, we are going to be selecting a random winner for a Plaid gift basket. So we appreciate that. Sorry, I think it was like my Amber Alert went off in the middle of this thing, so I apologize. Crazy. Yeah, so everyone who comments tonight, we are going to be selecting a random winner for a Plaid gift basket of products. And we are looking forward to having everyone on board tonight.
Awesome.
Hey guys, real quick, it looks like the overhead camera may be fallen asleep. It looks like the camera is currently not on.
Let's see. Technical difficulties.
Yeah, looks like we got a local alert on our phones. So here we go.
Yes, hope everyone's staying safe tonight. We know that it's some crazy times out there, and you know, I think that we were getting an alert about you know,
public safety.
Right, public safety and curfews and that sort of thing. So it's fun to be able to put all that aside for a little while and just paint and relax. And you know, it's one of the great things about
for an hour or so.
That's right. That's one of the things that throughout this whole pandemic, we've just heard again and again is that people just want to take a minute and relax and get creative and enjoy themselves. And so we're really looking forward to this opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thanks, John.
Jessie, we have people coming in from, all right, there's Baltimore, Texas, California, Michigan, North Carolina,
hey guys, welcome.
Kansas City, Chicago, Ohio, Reston, Virginia, Indiana. They're just keep on coming.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here.
All right. Okay. I mean, I think we're probably ready to start. People are just pouring in.
Okay, cool. I'm just going to start by letting you guys know the materials we'll be using tonight. So like I said, all the materials here you can get at michaels.com. So first we've got this 12 by 12 inch canvas. Really any square canvas will do. We have this pack of gold Taklon brushes. So this is the Super Value pack. And then we're using Full Guard acrylic paints tonight. So the first one we've got is Pistachio, which is this light green color. We've got Mossy Meadow, which is sort of a medium green. We've got Clover, which is the darkest of our three greens. And then we've got Pink Melon or Fire Coral. This is a very similar color, so it's like a bright orangey pink color. We've got Light Blue, Lavender, or Eggplant. Any sort of purple color you have will work for this one. And then we've also got Wicker White. And again, any white paint you have will work for this. So if you're at home and you're having trouble getting paint, please feel free to substitute what you have. We just need 3 greens, a pink, a light blue, really any color. This is the color for the flowers in the cactus. So you can use red or pink. It's totally up to you. And then we're going to be using white too. So I also have some paper towels, my water basin, and then right here I have palette paper, which is just some wax coated paper that you can put your paint on, but at home you can use a paper plate, a styrofoam plate, you know, aluminum foil, whatever you have at home is perfectly fine for this to put your paint on. So the brushes we'll be using tonight, in case you want to pull them out of the package, specifically we're going to be using the 3/4 inch flat brush, which is that big flat brush. We've got the number 10 round brush, which is the biggest round brush in your pack. We're also going to be using the number 3 round brush, which is the smaller of the rounds. And then this small flat brush, which is the number 8 flat. So in case you want to kind of get ready, you can pull those out. Those are the brushes we'll be using for this painting tonight. Okay, so let's get started. Again, we're going to be painting this cactus painting tonight. So we'll get started by showing you guys how to just draw the outline of this cactus. So I'm going to start on my canvas. I'm going to find the center of the canvas. We'll say about here. Let's get some paint on our palette. I've got my number 10 round brush, and I'm going to, this is a brand new brush, so I'm going to rinse the sizing off, because when you buy a brand new brush, there's like a coating on the bristles that keeps it nice and straight in the packaging, but we want to wash that out so we have nice soft bristles to get started. We don't want that crunchy coating on it when we're painting. So I'm going to dry it off, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab the lightest of my green, which is Pistachio. I'm going to put just a little bit of this on my palette, maybe about a dime or a nickel-sized amount. And I'm going to take my round brush, and I'm just going to water it down a little. So to do that, I'm going to dip my brush into my water basin. I'm going to make sure I have a good bit of water on there, and then I'm going to put it on my palette and mix it into the corner of my green. So now we have this like really watery sort of inky paint. So this is what I always do this when I'm drawing out my outlines before I paint. Feel free to use a pencil at home or a pen, whatever you've got, if that feels more comfortable for you. But I usually always draw mine in paint, and this is the way I do it. I use one of my lightest colors, and I water it down, and I use a round brush just to draw my loose outline, and then I can easily paint over it. So now that we've got our brush sort of set up, I'm going to set it there carefully. We're going to go back. We're going to find the center of the bottom of our canvas. So it doesn't need to be perfect. It's just sort of what you perceive as the center. Just kind of find that. And I'm going to put a mark there with my brush so I can see where it is. So hopefully you guys can see that. Just put a little mark in the center of my canvas. And then I'm going to find, about an inch on either side. You could even use your thumbprint to sort of measure it out. About an inch on either side. And I'm going to put a mark on either side of that dot in the middle. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect. You can see mine's not perfect. Just about that size. And that is going to be the base of our center cactus.
And Jessie, what size canvas are you using? Because people are asking whether they could use a different size or not.
Yeah, I am using a 12 by 12, just regular stretched canvas from Michaels. But you can use any size canvas for this painting. You'll just have to, scale it a little bit. If I say like, an inch here or an inch there, you'll just have to sort of proportion it based on how big your canvas is. So it shouldn't be difficult because we're not going to be doing rulers or measurements or anything like that. So any size canvas you have, it can be square, it can be rectangular, it'll be fine for this painting. Okay, and again, right now we're using Pistachio, and we've watered it down with water, of course. And I've got my number 10 round brush, and we're just going to sort of start sketching out our cactus. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect. That's one of my favorite things about painting plants and flowers is that no flower, no cactus, no plant is perfect or ever the same. So however you paint it is how it is going to be. And that's just perfect. All right, so now I marked the bottom at the center, and then I marked about an inch on either side. I'm going to move my line in a little bit there so it's a little bit narrower. And so that's going to be the base of my cactus shape, my big cactus. And then I'm going to find about maybe a third of the way down my canvas. Again, just eyeballing it, so it does need to be perfect. I'm going to put a little mark there. So your canvas should look something like this. So now what we're going to do is we're going to connect that line to these two lines in sort of a prickly pear cactus shape. So I'll remind you guys what the finished one will look like to give you an idea. So we're just going to go up and get wider and then come down and get a little bit more narrow and then wide again and then narrow again. And that's sort of going to be the base of our prickly pear cactus tonight. So you can see my lines are not perfect because that is just how a cactus looks. It's a little bit wiggly, it's a little bit irregular. So please, again, don't stress if it's not perfect. However you make it is perfectly fine. So I'll show you how I do it. So I'm going to try to use, wipe a little bit of my excess paint off. I'm going to try to use the tip of my brush. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to go out and then back in to where my line is here. So here, I'll show you how to do it. Just very carefully, very slowly. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'm going to go out, and then I'm going to bring it back in to match that line. Oops, I was a little bit to the side, but that's okay. Again, It doesn't need to be perfect. So this line is going to be painted over with plenty of paint on top of it. This is just a rough sketch of the shape of our cactus. So if you mess up or you feel like you made a mistake, do not stress. We're going to paint right on top of it. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. It'll be fairly proportional. I mean, fairly symmetrical, I should say. So we're going to go narrow, and we're going to come out and then back in to meet the base. So just like this. Out, and then we're going to go back in a little. So there we have sort of the base of our larger cactus. So now I'm going to draw the smaller cactuses on either side. So this cactus here, I'm going to find maybe the center between these two spaces. So hopefully you can see the corner of the canvas and where our little mark is here. And I'm going to find sort of the center of that. And again, I'm just eyeballing it. And then I'm going to go about halfway up this cactus. So you can see here how tall my cactus is. And I'm going to go about halfway. And I'm going to put a little dot there. So hopefully if you're using a different size canvas, this is still going to apply to you. We're not using any specific measurements. It just is in proportion to whatever size your canvas is. So for this one, we're going to do sort of something similar, but it's going to be a little rounder up the top, just to give it some variation. So we're going to make sort of a bulbous shape at the top, and then it's going to go down into a point here. Here, I'll show you. I'll remind you what the finished one looks like. It's sort of round up here, and then it comes down, and it's skinny at the base.
Hey, Jessie, would you turn the painting 180 degrees? There we go. We're going to turn it around because we just had our view upside down for folks. So there we go. That's what we needed.
That is a problem, guys. Sorry about that.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
This is live theater, folks.
Yes, this is really live. In case you're wondering, this is absolutely live.
There we go. Much better.
Okay, cool. So here, we'll just do a quick recap in case anybody was confused about that. So we made a mark in the bottom center of our canvas, just using some watered down green. And then we made a mark on either side about 1 inch out from that mark. So 1 inch to the left and 1 inch to the right, and we marked that. And then we made a mark about 2/3 of the way up our canvas, and then we just connected those lines. So now we have that nice symmetrical sort of prickly pear cactus shape. And then we looked at this mark, and we looked at the edge of our canvas, and we found the center of that, and we made a mark, and then we made a mark about halfway up our already drawn cactus. So I just said right about there. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect because, you know, however it looks is how your cactuses look, and it doesn't need to look like any specific cactus. So now, like I said before, we are going to make this one sort of round at the top, and it's going to get skinny at the bottom. So I'll start on the left side, and I'm going to go make it sort of round at the top. It's almost like a light bulb shape. And get skinny, and then round at the top, and get skinny.
Everybody's very excited about the cactuses, Jessie. They are absolutely loving it. And if you just review the colors also one more time that you've used so far.
Yeah. So all we've used so far is we're just sort of sketching out the outline of our cactus. And right now we are using Pistachio Green. So any light green will work for this. Really any of the colors will work for this because we're just sketching it out, and this is going to dry really quickly because we watered down the paint, and we're going to paint on top of it. So any color but white will work perfectly fine for this, but we're using the light green Pistachio.
And as everyone has been commenting, these classes are all available on demand after the session is over. So if you return to Michael's website, you will be able to see the a complete class. If you're a little behind the pace that Jessie is painting at, that's no problem. Just relax and go back, watch the class after the fact. It's got the full supply list, all the colors, and you can do this at your own pace.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to paint. We have sort of a little cactus poking into our frame here, and that's really just a little bit of a dome. So this one's pretty easy. I'm just going to paint a little dome on the bottom right, and that's just a little guy poking into our seam here. So now to fill some of the space on top, we don't want that all to be blank. So we're going to draw some more little pieces of prickly pear cactus coming up out of our big cactus to sort of fill that space. So we just drew this sort of light bulb shape. We're going to replicate that sort of coming out of the right side of our cactus, sort of coming out of this area here diagonally. So I always like to lay it out a little bit so I don't just start painting my line and go rogue. I like to have sort of a map. So I'll say this will be the center of my little light bulb guy, and I want him to go to about there. So now I know it's not gonna get wonky halfway through. So I'm gonna connect it that way, just like we did our other light bulb shape. It's gonna get big and then skinny at the bottom, just like that. And then even further, I'm going to draw a little bit of a tiny little light bulb guy coming off of that shape too. So the same thing, just skinny, big, and then skinny again. Because of course, prickly pears, some are big, some are small, and they all are just sort of growing out of themselves. And so it gets bigger at the base, and then the fruit gets tinier and tinier and tinier the further it goes up. So I'm going to do another one here, another sort of light bulb shape, and I'm going to mark my canvas. I'm going to have it coming out of about there, and I'm going to make him go to about there on my canvas. Can you guys see that? And I'm going to do another little light bulb shape. So fat on the top, and then it's going to get skinny towards the bottom. And then I'm going to make a couple little guys coming out of him too. So I'll do one on top just to kind of fill that space so we don't have too much negative space. And then I'm going to do one coming out of the side too. And he's going to kind of go off the canvas just to make it a little bit more interesting. All right, so I'm gonna wash my brush off because that is the outline of our prickly pear cactus. I'm gonna wash my brush off and make sure it's nice and dry. And again, all we did is we just drew the larger one with little guys coming off and then a couple smaller cactuses on either side. Doesn't need to be perfect. It's just however you want your cactus to look. You can match mine or you can draw your own prickly pear cactus. It's totally up to you. Feel free to match my design or, be creative and make yours in any shape or size that you want. That's fine too. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our fire coral, or I have pink melon, your bright pink color, and we're going to put about a quarter size amount of that on our palette. Then I'm also going to grab some wicker white, and I'm going to put about a quarter size amount of that as well.
And Jessie, just before you jump back in, would you give them one more view of the final painting? A couple folks need that as a reference.
So just a reminder, this is what our final painting will look like.
Yeah, if you set that right above your brushes, perhaps they might be able to see that right in the upper corner.
Right here? Okay, sure.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, cool, awesome. Okay, so just on my palette, I've put my bright pink color and I put wicker white. And again, these are our folk art acrylics. And I'm going to grab my 3/4 inch flat brush, which is just a larger flat brush. So if you're a painter, any medium to large flat brush will do. And I'm going to rinse off the sizing again. And again, it's because, when you buy brand new brushes, they're sort of crunchy, the bristles, and that's because they put a coating on them to protect them in the package. So you always want to just rinse that off with water so you have your bristles nice and soft when you get started. Okay. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of this bright pink color, fire coral, on my brush. You can see I put paint about halfway up the bristles. You don't want to overload your brush with paint because it just makes it harder to control. About halfway up. And we are going to start painting the background. Give myself a little space here. So the way we're going to paint the background is I'm going to start filling in around my green cactus in an X pattern. So here, I'll show you how I'm going to do it. I'm going to make X's like that and start filling in the background pattern. And we're going to do sort of a dabbing motion, making X's. And as we do that, you can sort of, go in any direction. We just want it to be sort of random directions, and we want to put a good bit of paint onto our canvas. And then I'm not going to clean my brush off. My brush still has the pink in it. I'm going to pick up a little bit of white. You can see I don't have a ton on there, just a little bit. And I'm going to start doing the same thing over my pink. And that's going to create sort of a textured look in the background. It makes it a little more interesting than having just the flat pink. And when you go around the cactus, you want to sort of, make sure you follow that shape a little. But again, we're going to be painting on top of that, so it doesn't need to be perfect. I'm just going to be making my pink X's. This is a really relaxing part of the painting. You're just sort of filling it in, kind of like a coloring book. Just making X's and following all around your cactus. And then we're adding the white in. And again, you never want to use, when you're painting like this, you never want to use too much paint. So if your canvas is really wet and filled with paint, it's just going to take longer to dry. So just enough to coat the canvas. That's about how much paint you want to use. And if it's easier for you, you can even go around the cactus and sort of paint right up to the edge if it feels a little safer for you not to go into that shape. And then you can do your pink right up to that in the random pattern. That's fine too, however you feel most comfortable. And again, we're just doing our pink color, and it's sort of an X motion. And we're filling in the whole background. So all around those cactus shapes that we painted, we are painting our X. And you guys, don't forget to comment and ask questions and let us know where you're from, because John is going to be picking a random person from the comments at the end of this to get $50 worth of Plaid product, so you can have all of the paints that you need to paint this painting. So again, we're just using our bright pink color, and we're painting in an X pattern all around our cactus to fill in the background. And then we're adding a little bit of white in to create some texture, so it's not just the flat pink. You can see X, 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 X. Or you can kind of just swish in different directions if that feels comfortable for you. We just don't want it all going in the same direction. We want it to go in lots of random directions to create that beautiful texture. And again, if you want to paint around your cactus, if that feels easier to you. And then you can sort of do your X pattern over it, and add in your wicker white. And the reason I always like to paint the backgrounds first, you know, after I've sketched out my shape, whatever it is that I'm planning on painting, I paint in the background first, and that way it gives it a little bit of time to dry. So when I go to paint my cactus, I can easily, if I were to accidentally get into my cactus a little bit like that, I can easily paint over it with the green. So if we were going to paint our cactus first and do all the beautiful detailing and then paint our background, we might get pink over it, and we'd have to go back and correct it, and it would just be kind of a pain. So this way, if we mess up our pink, we don't have to do it's easier to do our pink twice than our cactus twice, if that makes sense. It's easier to touch up the pink than it will be to touch up the cactus. Again, I'm just going all around our little cactus shapes, and I'm adding in white just to create texture. And if you don't want to use this pink color, you can feel free to make a purple background or a blue background to make it look like a sky. It is totally up to you. When I originally painted this painting, I was sort of thinking of like a desert sunset, and so that's why I made this corally colored background. But if you want to have a night sky or a bright blue sky, you can do whatever you want for your background. And you can do the same technique. Just do your X shape with whatever color you choose, and then you're just going to make more X's while it's wet of the white over it. And again, we're using the bright pink color, fire coral, or whatever bright pink color you have, and we're mixing wicker white into it.
Everybody is loving these tips, Jessie, and they love the X strokes and just all the tips that you're giving, and they are really having a great time.
Well, good. I'm glad everybody's enjoying it. I hope everyone's home. They're taking a little bit of time for themselves tonight, just a little break from everything to relax and sort of unwind.
So what do you, a couple of folks are wondering if they had a different color palette, like for the background. For folks are wondering, could they use a blue palette?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you have, like I said, if you wanted to do like a blue sky, you can totally do that. Like I said, when I was painting this painting originally, I was sort of thinking of like a desert sunset, and that's where I went with this bright pink color. But whatever color you want, you could do a night sky, you could do a purple background. It's totally your preference. Any color will work for this. I probably would avoid doing like a green background just because it'll blend in with our cactus and you won't be able to really see the cactus. But other than that, any color would be perfect.
Great. We've got folks really enjoying it. We've got some mother and daughter teams painting tonight. We've got
awesome.
Lots of folks who are enjoying these Michael's classes. Somebody just said, Jessie, this is my second class with you. You're the best.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Nelda just said, my 9-year-old just got into painting to help with her anxiety, and she's in heaven right now. And that's what it's all about, folks. You know, I mean, this is not rocket science. We just saw that rocket go up, and fortunately, none of us have to worry about that. We just get to,
maybe, who knows? Maybe some of you do need to worry about it.
maybe some of them do. I don't know, but we're not worrying about it here. We're just having fun, and we're painting and relaxing.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about painting and about crafting and just art in general is it's a little bit of time to yourself. It's a little bit of time to just sort of turn off your brain and relax a little.
So how's everybody doing? Let's take a minute to make sure people are caught up, because I see that Jessie's sort of got her background done. Yeah. Do we need to take a minute? Are people able to keep up so far?
So now, John, maybe if people are sort of on track, or if they're even a little bit ahead, now's a great time to paint the sides of your canvas. So that'll give other folks a good chance to catch up too, because you can always go back and paint the sides later if you're not caught up yet, if you're still painting your background. But if you are caught up, or if you're a little bit ahead of us, you can go ahead and just do sort of the same thing around the sides of your canvas to sort of finish the painting. Yeah,
why don't you go ahead and do yours, Jessie, because there are folks who need a little bit more time.
Yeah, no problem.
And while we're here, I just want to, I just want to take an opportunity for those of you who are enjoying this. We are going to be doing several of these paintings here in the Michael's community classroom. So I encourage you to keep checking back on their website for the next class. Also, all the other classes that they have, because they have an amazing selection of stuff. We just Plaid alone, we're doing Mod Podge classes, paint pouring classes, Let's Paint Live. So please keep checking back on the Michael's Community Classroom page to see what classes are available. I would also encourage you, if you don't do so already, follow Plaid Crafts on our Facebook page and on our Instagram, because we have things like this all the time. We do all kinds of free lessons and classes. Jessie is one of our star teachers, and she goes live all the time on Plaid social media. Yep. So, follow Michael's, sign up for their newsletter, follow Plaid Crafts, sign up for our newsletter, and you will not miss any of this great content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do a lot of fun things. We have a whole painting program on our social channels, so make sure you follow us as well as Michael's for plenty more content. It's
Plaid Crafts, Plaid like the fabric, crafts, and you'll find us on Facebook.
Yeah.
And Instagram and Pinterest and everywhere.
All the things.
All the
places. We're there. So again, we are just painting the sides now to allow people some time to catch up in case they're still painting their background. But if you are still catching up, don't be stressed. You don't need to paint your sides right now. It is so easy to go back and do that at the end. So just take this time to paint the front of your canvas, to paint the background. We're just doing this now to kind of let people catch up. If people are ahead, now's a good time to just go ahead and paint the sides. I usually don't paint the sides of my canvas until the very end, just because it's kind of messy. And so I like to wait till it's dry. But we're just doing this now, like I said, to give people a chance to catch up.
Yes, and once again, guys, I know that everyone is enjoying this, but if you do feel like you're getting a little bit behind, that's okay. The entire class is available on demand after the fact on Michael's website, and you will be able to go back and watch the whole thing with all the supplies and the colors and the techniques and everything.
Yeah. And again, please feel free to substitute any of the colors. Any pink will do, any 3 greens will do, any white will do. So It's hard for some people to get supplies right now, but please just paint along anyway, using whatever you've got at home.
And I will tell you this, throughout this entire situation that we've had with the quarantine and the pandemic, Michael's has been amazing with their curbside pickup, their delivery options. So even if you're not at a place yet where you want to be feeling like you're going into store, we really, you know, at Plaid's offices, it's funny, we found ourselves going to Michael's to buy our own stuff.
We go there like every day.
Right? We were there, felt like we were there every day to go and get our own paint because we had stopped manufacturing for a while. And we could go to Michael's and do curbside pickup. So between their website and their various options, they are the place to go.
Yeah, we were buying canvases there. We were there all the time getting our palette paper and everything. So yeah, Michael's has been awesome. Okay. So you think people are catching up, John?
I think so. We're going to have to move on. So everybody get ready.
All right. So we are going to start painting our cactuses. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wash off my brush. I'm going to wash off my big brush that we've been using. And I like to make sure I get my brushes nice and clean between colors, just so I don't like to let any paint ever dry in there. And that's just a good habit to get into when you're painting. And that's how you keep your brushes nice. Just clean them one by one. I got a bad habit of just leaving all of my brushes in the water basin, and then they get gross and they absorb all the water. So that is not a good habit. It's better if you just clean your brushes as you go. Okay, so I'm actually going to use this light green, which is the green that we use to paint the outline. So we are using Pistachio, and again, this is full coat acrylic, but any light green will do. I think it's even going to be a little different than my original painting. We're kind of mixing it up with some different greens. So I'm add a little bit more. And I'm going to use my large flat brush again. Again, this is my 3/4 inch flat. And I'm going to start just base coating the center area of my cactus. So just nice light coating. You don't want to put a ton of paint on there. You just want enough to get full coverage, which is really easy. Folk art acrylics are my favorite paints to paint with because they have such amazing coverage. They're really rich and creamy. You know, it's really annoying when you're painting something like this and you have to go back multiple times to get full coverage on something. You just kind of want to paint it and be done with it and have it look good the first time. So that's why I love folk art acrylics, that they really just paint so smoothly and cover so well. You can see the background. You only have to do one coat and there's no canvas showing. So even my green here, a lot of times, especially with lighter pigments, it takes many coats to cover something fully, like if you're using yellow or something like that. But this one is getting really great coverage right off the bat. And I'm just going to go right up to the edge. I'm going to sort of use the chiseled edge of my brush to get right up to the pink. And again, nothing fancy here. We're just painting in the line to get a nice coat of green sort of as our base to paint the details.
What size brush are you using right now, Jessie?
I am using the 3/4 inch flat brush, which if you're using the Craft Smart Super Value Pack, it is the largest flat brush in the pack. But any medium to large size flat brush will work for this part. And again, I'm using the edge of my brush to get right up to the edge of my cactus. And if your pink around the edges is still a little bit wet, and if you do get a little bit of pink into your green, that's okay. It'll be really easy to paint over when it dries, or you can wipe the pink off your brush and go back over it with green. No big deal. And we're just painting this large area, and I'm using Pistachio Green, the lightest of the greens we have tonight. So any light green will do. Or if you only had one green, you can just add white to that green to make it lighter. So you have different shades. You will need the different shades for this painting tonight. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to fill in these two guys here on either side of my big cactus. And again, nothing fancy. We're just taking our time to fill in the cactus shape.
Now, if someone had a sponge brush, Jessie, would they be able to use that, or is that difficult to do with these techniques?
You would definitely be able to do the background and sort of base coating with this. We have a little bit of detail as we'll be painting later. We're going to be painting the spines on the cactus. Those might be a little bit tricky, but I say why not? You can do a lot of things with a sponge brush. You can use the tips of them to your advantage. You can use the chiseled edge of a sponge brush, so it might work. It'd be great if you had a sponge brush and maybe a little bit of a smaller brush to do those details, but I think you could do the bulk of this painting if you have that at home, sure. That's all you got, why not?
It feels like the details might be a challenge with the sponge brush, but maybe for the base coating for sure.
Yeah, for the base coating, you can totally use a sponge brush. So again, we're just painting a nice even coat of our lightest green, which I have pistachio green, and nothing fancy. We're just making an even coat on our larger prickly pear shapes. And I'm using the edge of my brush to get right up to the edges. Just taking our time to fill in these areas. And the more you paint, the quicker you get at these sort of parts. I need to remind myself, just because I paint every single day here at Plaid. And so I need to remind myself to sort of slow down and take my time and enjoy the process of just filling in these areas. So I'm gonna get ahead and I'm gonna clean my brush off now. But please take your time. Keep filling those in. You just want a nice even coat. You don't want too much paint. When I'm painting, I usually do sort of these quick paintings, especially for Plaid. We do our Let's Paint Live once a month where we paint a painting in just about an hour, so I like to keep them quick. So I try to plan my paintings where each coat will dry quickly in between and I continue to paint on top of it. So that's why I like to just do nice, even, thin coats because it dries quickly and then I can paint right on top of it.
Yeah, people are appreciating that you've given them a little chance to catch up, so.
Good, I'm glad.
So Jessie, here's an interesting question. People said, how did you get into working for Plaid?
Oh, well, that is a great question. Actually, John, who's talking to you right now, is a family friend of ours. So I am an artist and I went to school for art. And John told me about Plaid and how they have content creators here who just get to make art all day, art and inspiration using the product. So it's a dream job. I love working at Plaid, but yeah, it's through my friend John here.
It's one of the few companies where we hire people to actually be full-time crafters for a living. Yep, so exactly. I know that's a dream job for a lot of folks.
Full-time. Yep, full-time and benefits. It's a real job. People are always like, is that a real job? And I'm like, I promise, it is a real job. I have to pinch myself.
Well, everyone is very jealous. There's a lot of folks saying, I want that job.
I get that a lot. We're a lucky bunch here, that's for sure. Okay, so I'm going to grab a smaller brush. We're just going to keep filling in these smaller areas. So I'm going to go down to my number 8 flat brush just to make it a little more manageable. And we're going to keep doing the same thing. I'm going to rinse off the sizing because, again, it's a new brush. And we're going to keep using the same light green. We're just going to fill in these areas. And we've gone down to a smaller brush just to make it easier in some of these tiny areas. The bigger brush might get a little bulky and difficult to manage.
So Jessie, do you thin down your paint at all, or are you using this directly out of the bottle?
I never thin down my paint. When I'm painting like this, I do not thin down my paint. This is directly out of the bottle. The only time I do thin down my paint is like we did in the beginning where I was painting the outline. I just wanted a nice flat, light line, and that's why I thinned it down just to sort of an inky consistency. But when I'm doing this sort of painting on top, like the real painting, I guess you could say, I never thin it down. I always use it straight out of the bottle.
Yeah, and that thick, rich consistency is sort of a hallmark of the folk art brand, and it's something that we are very proud of. And so it really makes blending and working with the paint a lot easier.
Yeah, and we have lots of mediums. If you were to do some sort of blending, or if you wanted to float colors and things like that, if you're a little more advanced, if you've got some experience painting, we've got plenty of mediums for that. I don't recommend ever adding water to acrylic paint for your painting for things like that. I would recommend using a medium if maybe that's what you're thinking of.
Oh yeah, there are, yes, that's right. There are floating mediums and that sort of thing that you can use to help your paint glide a little bit better and so on.
Yeah. We've got an extender too, I think, that sort of thing. So you can add those because those are sort of similar to what the paint is made of. So they don't break down the texture of the paint at all. They just add to it. So they're sort of, whatever is in the paint is also shares ingredients with what is in the floating medium and mediums like that. So when you put them together, they don't lose their consistency or lose their pigmentation, I guess. When you put water in, it sort of just starts breaking down that paint. And that's just, I don't know, I try to avoid that.
Well, Shirley is on her 4th class with you, Jessie, and she loves them all. So that's exciting.
Okay, Shirley.
And people are just talking about this is just such a break from what's going on out in the world right now. And everyone is so happy to be relaxing and having such a great time tonight.
Well, good. I'm really glad you guys are all joining. We're really lucky to have all of you guys watching along. And we just love teaching you. We love painting with everybody. So thank you for being here. We're glad that you're enjoying it.
And we've got folks from around the world here, Jessie. Like somebody was just saying it's 7 a.m. where they are. So, you know, that's a long ways away.
Some early painting.
That's right.
Well, again, thank you for joining us. And you can see, sort of to get into that detail there, I don't know if you saw what I just did. I sort of put my brush in the middle and did a twirling motion to kind of get into that detail. And again, I'm just using the edge of my brush to get to that line. I'm using sort of a twirling motion. But you can do a dabbing motion too. You could do maybe like that if you want to get in there. Whatever you feel comfortable doing, whatever level of painting you're at, however much practice you have, it'll get more and more comfortable to do things like that. So that is the base coat of our cactus. Hopefully you guys are all able to keep up.
Is everybody doing okay? They've got their cactus filled in so far?
Hopefully we're going at a good pace.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we're doing all right, Jessie.
Awesome. Okay, I'm glad to hear it. Okay, so we are going to grab the medium of our greens, which for me, I have here a Mossy Meadow. But whatever the medium green that you're using is, that's what we're going to use now. I'm going to put about a nickel-sized amount on my palette. And I'm going to keep using my number 8 flat brush. But if you have a 1/2 inch flat, that's fine too. Just some sort of medium flat brush is what we're going to use here. And I'm going to pick up some paint on here. And we're going to draw sort of the big shadowy area. I'll show you on our final painting of our cactus. So we're going to paint sort of that area there. So you can see we're going to learn a little bit about highlights and shadows. We're not going to get too fancy, don't worry. It's just a very beginner idea of how to add highlights and shadows to your painting. So hopefully don't get intimidated because I'm going to really break it down and make it super simple. But that's what we're going to be doing. It's sort of a very pop arty looking design. It's very graphic. So we're going to be painting those shadows there. So I'm going to start, like I said, with my medium green. And I'm going to start here on the right side of my large area. And I'm going to start, you can see I'm about maybe 3/4 of the way up my right side. And I put a little mark there so I know. So you can see here, that's sort of where we are here. And I'm going to—
Which brush are you using, Jessie?
I am using my number 8 flat brush. So
Great.
If you have a medium-sized flat brush, if you have like a 1/2 inch flat at home, that works too.
And we're using, just remind folks which of these shades of green we've gone to now.
Yeah, I am using Mossy Meadow. So it's the medium of our green. So whichever sort of medium green color, if you have like a grass green, that works too. We're using the medium of our greens in our palette tonight. Great. So again, I just went about 3/4 of the way up the side of my cactus, and I just made a little mark there, and I started painting, but I'll hang on. So you can see that's sort of where we're at right now, sort of marking that spot. And I'm just gonna paint a line right up to the edge of my cactus. All we're doing is we're just gonna follow that line all the way down because we're gonna sort of fill in that area with green. Just very lightly. Hopefully your green is fairly dry by now, because that's the great thing about folk art acrylics or just acrylics in general, really, is that they dry really nice and quickly. So so we're going to just paint right on top of it. If it's a little wet beneath, that's okay too. You can just sort of blend it into that color. That's okay. Since they're both green, it won't get muddy or anything. It'll just be another pretty green color. So all we've done is we just sort of follow the edge of our cactus with our number 8 flat brush. And then next what we're going to do is we're going to just pull it out into the center, but then we're going to follow the shape of this side. So it's going to be sort of, it's going to sort of go like that. This line that we draw here, can you guys see that on their screen?
Yeah,
it's
you can see
parallel to the left line. Hopefully that makes sense. So they're kind of going to match each other. So here, I'll show you what I'm going to do. Maybe you might want to watch first and sort of get an idea of what I'm doing. I'm going to pull my brush. You can see I'm just holding my brush sort of in the middle and have a very light grip on it. I'm not holding it like a pencil. I'm holding it sort of in the middle. And I'm going to go out, and then I'm going to follow my sort of S or sort of curved shape there. So can you see how I did that? So I followed that shape, and it sort of reflects that in our line there. You can make this shadow as big or as small as you'd like, but we're just going to fill that in. And again, we're painting the shadows on our cactus, and this is Mossy Meadow in our number 8 flat brush. We're just going to fill in that area just the same way we've been base coating the rest of our cactuses.
People are really saying that it's easy to understand the way you're teaching, Jessie. So
well, good. I'm glad. I always hope so.
Yeah, this is great.
When we do this at Plaid, we oftentimes have a live audience. We have a lot of our friends and family and coworkers here painting along with us for our paint nights. So it's good to know. I usually can kind of peek and see if people are getting it, people are following along. So I'm glad to get the feedback. Thanks, John.
Yep. And if you had a little trouble seeing what she did with the shadow, don't fret, because she's got a couple more that she's going to do on the other little pieces of the cactus there. So you'll see her do it again here in a minute. Yep.
So I'll do a little refresh in case you guys were still catching up, or in case you missed when I painted that line. All we did was I made a little mark about 3/4 of the way up my cactus right there. I just made a mark with my brush, and then I painted down the side. I just followed the line, and then we went out into the center, and then we just sort of followed that shape, followed that curve. So these kind of go parallel. They reflect each other. And then we filled it in. That's as simple as that. And that's kind of the technique that we're going to be using to add some of the shadows to the rest of our cactus. And we're not going to be doing any blending. This is very graphic, sort of pop arty looking cactus. So we're just going to be painting the shadows and the highlights in sort of blocky, colorful areas. So yeah.
Great. People are asking if they're going to get to share their finished paintings, and the answer to that is absolutely. You can tag @PlaidCrafts with your finished painting. You can hashtag us, and we will see those. We do a Fan Friday every week, and so we can share people's paintings. And also, you know, we have a special group just for painting called Let's Paint with Plaid. It is a Facebook group. Please join it, because we have not only lessons like this, but we have another teacher here at our office named Andy Jones, who goes live multiple times every week. So we are teaching people to paint many times a week on Plaid's Facebook channels. So tag @PlaidCrafts with your finished paintings so we can see them, and be sure to join our Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group.
Yeah, we'd love to see it. Please, please, please do, because I love to see everybody's paintings after. Whenever we do paint nights, like John said, at Plaid, I love to get on Facebook the next morning and look at that hashtag and see all the paintings that everyone did the night before. It's so fun for us. And
I can't say it enough. The curriculum that Michaels has put together with these community classroom, not only with Plaid, but with a lot of other companies as well, has really been amazing. So just stay tuned to Michael's website so that you can see these lineup of classes that they have.
We're really lucky to be part of it. We're really, We're happy to be partnering with Michaels. We're so excited. Okay. So we're going to go down to our smaller cactus here on the left, and we're going to do the exact same thing, the same technique, just following this shape instead. So I'm going to go about 3/4 of the way at the right side of my cactus. And I don't think I mentioned this really quick. For our cactus, I should have started with this. Whenever you're painting a painting like this, you need to choose where the light is coming from. So for this cactus painting, I decided the light was coming down from the top left. That's where I decided like the sun was hitting it, or if it's in a greenhouse, the light is hitting it. Wherever the light is coming from, it's coming from right here. So because of that, all of our shadows are going to be on this side of our cactus, on the bottom right side. So hopefully that makes sense. The light is coming from the top left, the shadows will be on the bottom right. They'll be opposite always. So when we go to do our highlights later, they'll all be on the top left of every shape because that's where the light is hitting it. And that is just a super simple beginner way to just start adding sort of highlights and sometimes even reflections and shadows to your paintings. Just pick where you want the light source to be, and that's where the highlights will be, and the shadows will be on the opposite. So again, just a really simple way to kind of start playing with highlights and shadows. So again, so that's why we started doing our shadow on the bottom left. We're gonna do the same thing here. So again, we're using our number 8 flat brush, and we're using Mossy Meadow, and I have gone about 3/4 of the way up my little cactus here. And I'm gonna follow the right line. I'm just gonna follow that green line where we already have it painted. Nothing fancy. And we are gonna do the same thing. We're gonna go out into the middle, and then we're gonna follow that line. And so it just sort of like follows the shape of the cactus. It gives it a little bit of dimension. So the same thing, I'm just gonna go out into the middle, and I'm gonna paint that line to match. You see how those sort of parallel? We're gonna fill that in.
Everyone's very thankful about having the instruction about the light source. And I think that's something that is probably pretty key in any painting that you make, is you really have to understand where light is coming from so that you're able to be consistent throughout your painting.
Yeah, whenever you want to add dimension to anything, that's just a good rule of thumb. Wherever your shadows are, the highlights can be on the opposite side of those shapes. And I think a lot of people, which is fine, a lot of painters who just kind of do these quick fun paintings just add their highlights wherever, and that's fine too. But once you sort of get more experience, you start practicing, and those paintings will start looking a little wonky to you. You'll kind of start noticing like, hey, those highlights really shouldn't be there. But again, it doesn't matter. It's your painting. You can put it wherever you want. But this is just a great rule of thumb if you want your paintings to have dimension and to be a little bit more realistic. So we still got our Mossy Meadow and our number 8 flat brush. We're gonna do the same thing here. This one's gonna be really simple. It's just gonna be the little right side of that guy there. Can you see that? This one, since it's hardly any cactus showing, just a little guy peeking in. That's all that one's gonna be. So it's sort of, you can see how they're all sort of looking like each other because that light is coming down, and so all the shadows are down here. So for the ones up here, you can see these are just sort of all sort of upright, and they're the same position, so it's easy to know. We can just match all those shadows. These guys are going in kind of different directions, so I'll help you figure out where those shadows want to go because they're not going to be quite the same. So on this guy, if the light's coming down from the top left, this shadow is going to go up this way. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to make a little mark because that's where this shape would start. So that'll be the bottom. And we're going to paint the shadow up to about maybe there because that's going to be the underside. And we're just going to simply follow the bottom of this line. That's it. We're just going to follow the bottom of the line. I'm going to go right up there. And I'm going to make it come to sort of a point there. That's all. And then you can even make it a little bit thicker if you want, but all we're doing is following the shape of the bottom of this little piece of prickly pear. I think it's called the fruit, but I'm not sure about that. That might be a guess.
You're a painter, not a botanist, Jessie. So
Exactly. I never claimed to be a scientist. I always try to, everybody here always teases me. I always try to do a little research. about whatever I'm teaching to paint, so I can call all of the different pieces of that painting something accurate, and then I start using fancy words and people always question me, but I try to Google it. Okay, so you can see there, all we did was we followed the bottom side of that shape, and then we just made it a little bit thicker. So we're just following the shape of the cactuses we already have painted. So for this guy, it's gonna be something similar. So again, we're gonna picture, like say this white bottle of paint is the sun shining down. The shadow is gonna be on the bottom side, right? This bottom side of him is not going to be in the light. So we're gonna put a shadow there. I'm gonna do the same thing on the bottom side of this guy, just like we did there. So I'm just gonna follow the bottom edge, and I'm just gonna sort of let my brush make the shape. I'm not going to put too much thought into it. I'm going to use the shape of my brush to my advantage. And the more you paint, the more you sort of can understand which brushes to use for which pieces of your painting. And you can see sometimes I like to, if I'm gonna be pausing, I'm gonna be taking my time, I do wash my brush out between shapes, even using the same color, just because I don't like to let any of the paint dry on my brush, just so to keep them sort of soft and fresh. So now we've got our shadows on most of our shapes. We are going to add them to these little tiny guys up here. So it's gonna be something very similar. This one is going to be, so sort of the base of him, and then going down on either side. Can you see that? It's sort of a V, because that part would sort of be, so it's sort of a bulbous shape. So picture that was like the shape of a light bulb. It would sort of be on the bottom, and it'd be like sort of cupping either side is where the shadow would be. I'm gonna do the same thing on this guy. It's gonna be sort of in the bottom here, and then sort of a V shape, sort of cupping that round shape at the top. Just a little V. And on this guy, we're just gonna do the same thing. We're gonna draw a little line on the bottom because he's sort of going horizontal, so he just needs a little shadow there. Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna rinse my brush off, and those are our medium shadows. So now I'm going to grab my round brush. So this is back to the first brush we used. This is our number 10 round brush, and I'm gonna keep this same color. I'm gonna keep the Mossy Meadow, and all we're gonna do is we're just gonna add a little bit of fun detail to our cactus, and we're just going to outline the shape. It's gonna sort of make it pop. You can see how on our finished painting, we've got this like dark, fun, like sort of like squiggly outline. It sort of makes the paint look like it's vibrating, like it's really bold and funky. So we're gonna add that to the outline of our cactus. So I'm not gonna make it perfect. I'm going to intentionally make it a little bit wiggly, which for some people I think might bother them, but that's okay. It's just sort of the style of this painting. If you wanna make your outline perfect, you can absolutely do that. But I'm gonna make mine a little bit wiggly on purpose just because I like the way that it looks. So I'm gonna show you on this guy down here. So I'm gonna use the very tip of my brush. So whenever I'm using a round brush to draw lines, I dip it in the paint and then I swirl it. And that's how I can ensure that I have a nice tip. So hopefully you guys can see how I have a nice sharp tip on my brush. I just swirl it on my palette to get that. So it's almost like a nice drawing tip now. So I'm gonna start here. I'm just gonna start outlining. I'm gonna put very little pressure on my canvas, and then sometimes I'm gonna push down and pull up and push down and pull up. I'm going to sort of vary the pressure as I'm drawing, just very randomly. If you joined us for our lemons a couple of weeks ago, we played around with pressure a lot to draw our shadows and our highlights. So it's sort of similar. If you were practicing the different pressures on your brush then, it's something very similar now. So you'll be sort of a step ahead of everybody. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'll just start here, and I'm gonna do light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure, heavy pressure. And you can see I'm going right on the line between the pink and the light green, because our pink should be dry by now. If you are sort of going in the same order as me, that's perfectly dry by now, so we can just go ahead and paint on top of it. So I'm gonna do light pressure and heavy pressure. Again, I'm just gonna make it random because it sort of gives it a bold, sort of vibrating look, which I think is a really fun style of painting.
So the harder you press down, the thicker your line is gonna be. Is that right, Jessie?
Exactly. So you can even feel free to practice. You really can't make a mistake with this. So don't stress about it. Don't feel you're gonna mess it up, because you can't. but feel free to practice on your plate or a napkin, whatever you've got. You can do sort of a light line here and then press down for a thicker shape and a light line and press down. You see that? The harder you press, the thicker your line will be. So we're just going to continue doing that all around every shape on our cactus. So we're going to go around the big one and all the small ones. We're going to do the same thing for all of them. Just sort of drawing a squiggly outline to make our cactus pop.
So Jessie, we have folks as young as 5 years old painting tonight.
Oh,
and
I love that.
And 8 years old I've just seen. And so many families are getting together right now. Someone just said, my wife signed us up for this and we're using our new craft room.
Oh,
I'm 11,
cool.
I'm 12, I'm 11. I'm just seeing these comments come in. So look at that, 5 from H. William. This is so fun.
Wow, cool. Well, welcome everybody. We're glad you're painting along. You're never too young to start painting. The sooner the better, in my opinion. The younger you are, the more practice you'll get in painting. So welcome, guys. We're so happy to have you. Hopefully this will be a fun painting for all ages, whether you've been painting for a long time or whether you're brand new. No matter how old you are, hopefully you guys will enjoy this one. It's a nice, simple, easy one. So we're
I'd like to know who the oldest person is we have, because everyone's chiming in with their ages. So we've got some
I don't know if they want to share that, John.
We got folks who are 4. I want to see who's.
I saw 73 there, so.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you do not need to
Betty,
share your
Betty
age
is
if you
70.
don't want to.
Okay, Gabby says she's 104. I'm not sure.
Maybe so. If you are, congratulations. Welcome.
Yes.
We're so glad you're joining us. That was so cool, guys. Thank you so much. That's so funny. Okay, so just a reminder, we're still just outlining all of our shapes. We are applying variant pressure, so we're pressing very lightly sometimes and pressing a little heavier sometimes, and that way we get thinner lines and thicker lines, and that's sort of the magic of a round brush. I love the round brush because no matter how big your brush is, you can get very thin lines or very thick lines depending on how much pressure you have. It doesn't matter the size of your brush. Like I said before, you can see on my palette, I have a really thin line there because I'm barely putting any pressure, or I can do a thick line because I'm pressing down. So that's the exact same brush. I didn't do anything different. It's just all about the pressure. So we are going to continue doing this all around the edge of our cactus. We're just doing a nice bold outline. And you can see I'm sort of skipping the parts where I have the shadow just because it's the same color, so you won't see it. You don't necessarily need to go down that side too. I'm just going on the sides where we don't have our shadow.
And what color are we using now, Jessie? What's the darker green that you're using?
We are using the medium green, and it is still Mossy Meadow.
Oh, Mossy Meadow. Great.
Yeah, it's the medium of the greens in our palette tonight. I'm just making my shadows a little bigger because I want them to be bigger now. I changed my mind. Okay, so all we've done is we've just outlined all of our cactuses. And again, we were using the number 10 round brush and Mossy Meadow. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to rinse off my brush now. Make sure it's pretty clean, nice and dry. I don't like to leave water in my brush either, just because if you keep it dry, it sort of makes your brush last longer. You can keep it for a very, very, very long time. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to grab the darkest of our greens, which for me here tonight is my Clover, but any dark green will do. If you don't have a very dark green, say if you're using only one green color and you mixed white to get the light one, if you have like a dark blue, you can add that to make it your green darker, or you can just add a touch of black, just a teeny tiny bit of black, and that'll help make your green darker too for this part. So I'm going to put a little bit of this in my palette. So what we're going to do here is we're going to draw an even further shadow on our cactus shape. I'm just going to pick up a little bit. Again, we're still using our number 10 round brush. I'm picking up a little bit of this green, and I'm going to follow this line right on the edge. And I'm going to use pretty heavy pressure to make a nice thick line. You can see here, I'm starting about maybe an inch below where this shadow begins, and I'm going right on the edge. And it's just adding another layer of dimension, just another little detail. I'm just pressing down hard. You can see that I started thin and then I just went right into heavy pressure. And I'm just following that line down the side of my area. And that just gives it, like I said, another layer of dimension. Makes our cactus look a little more round, like it's not flat. I'm just touching up my line a little bit. I went a little rogue there at the bottom. That's okay. There's no mistakes. It's always fixable. That's the great thing about acrylic paint too. If you don't like what you did, just hit it with a hairdryer and paint right on top of it. So we're going to continue doing that with all of our shadows. We are going to go to the furthest side of our shadow, and we're going to do that line again. So start light pressure and then heavy. Do the same thing here. Light pressure and then heavy towards the bottom. See how we're doing that?
And you're using the number 8 round, is that right?
Yep, we're using number 10 round.
Oh, number 10 round, okay.
Which is the larger of the round brushes in our super value pack, our Craft Smart set of brushes. But any medium to large round brush will do. So the same thing here. So for me, I'm right-handed, and it's more comfortable for me to pull from left to right. So sometimes I switch it up a little bit. If you're left-handed, it might be easier for you to pull from right to left. So just keep that in mind when you're painting this. You just have to sort of flip-flop it. Like I said, for me, I'm right-handed, so it's easier for me to pull from left to right when I'm painting a stroke. So instead of starting at the top here and pulling down to the left, I'm going to start with heavy pressure at the bottom and pull up and make lighter pressure as I go. And again, that's just because, like I said, I'm right-handed, so that feels more natural to me. But like I said, if you're left-handed, it might feel more natural for you to pull down and do light pressure into heavy pressure. So it's all about what is comfortable for you. I always say this, whenever I'm painting paintings, I usually have my painting all over the place as I'm painting it. I'm turning it upside down, I'm turning it diagonal, but I have to remind myself to keep it nice and straight for you guys when you're painting along, because I don't think you want me moving my painting all over the place. But if that's how it's comfortable for you at home to paint, feel free to do that. You can move your stuff, you can paint sideways. If it feels comfortable for you to paint that line upside down, you can totally go for it. However it feels comfortable for you to paint it. So again, we're continuing. We've got our darker of the greens, which is Clover, and we still have our number 10 round brush, and we're just painting another line. I'm going to do light pressure into heavy pressure at the base of each of our cactus shapes. So a little line there. Do the same thing here, right at the base of our V. We'll go an even darker shade. You can see that just sort of adds even more dimension to what was a really flat looking prickly pear. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna wash my brush off. Okay, so now I'm gonna rinse my brush. I'm gonna put a little bit more of my lightest green, which is Pistachio, but whatever your lightest green at home is. I'm gonna put a little bit of that onto my palette, maybe about dime-sized amount. And I've already got some Wicker White on my palette, but if you're out of Wicker White or if yours has dried or something like that, feel free to go ahead and put some more Wicker White on. And I'm going to mix that together about a 1-to-1 ratio. So 1 part Pistachio, and 1 part Wicker White. I might to get some fresh Wicker White that was a little bit dry. We'll see. So we're just lightening that pistachio. Again, anytime you want to lighten a color, you just add a touch of white. A little bit goes a long way. So just keep that in mind for the future when you're mixing colors. You can always add more, but you can't take it out. We're just mixing. I'm adding a little more white because I want it to be pretty light. So I always like to start with a 1-to-1 ratio, and then I can lighten it or darken it depending on how it's starting to look, depending on what color I'm going for. And the color I'm mixing here is going to be the first of our highlights for our cactus. So that's what we're mixing. It's just an even lighter green. And you can see here, if you take a look at my brush is just sopping with paint. This is way too much paint on your brush for painting and being able to control your brush as you go. So whenever I mix with my brush like this, I always, always, always wash the excess out of my brush before I start painting with it. So if you have like a palette knife at home or something, if you're sort of an advanced painter, or if you've got a good bit of supplies, you can totally mix your paint with that instead. And that way you don't have to get all that paint in your brush, but I always just mix with my brush when I'm doing these quick paintings. And you can feel free to do that too. But again, I always, always wash my brush after I mix it with the bristles like that, because I don't want to paint with all of that paint in my brush. You don't have as good of control. You just get a big like sopping mess whenever you try to paint with that. Okay, so now we've got this nice pale green. And remember, our light is coming in from the top left. And so we made all of our shadows on the bottom right. So now we're going to start painting our highlights. So where are they going to be? They're going to be on the top left where the light is hitting them. So we're going to pick up a little bit of this pale green. And again, this was Pistachio and Wicker White. And you can see I don't have a ton of paint on my brush. I try not to ever have paint on my brush more than halfway down the bristles. And I do a nice twirl to get that nice point. And we're going to do the same thing we sort of did with these green lines on the top left. So here, I'll start with this middle cactus here. I'm gonna start sort of on the inside to create more dimension. I'm not gonna go right up to the edge. I'm gonna do a line sort of right there. So I'm gonna start with very light pressure, and then heavier pressure, and then light pressure again. I'm gonna go back over that line because I didn't have quite enough paint. So light pressure, heavier pressure, and light pressure. And I'm just sort of loosely following the edge of my cactus. And we're gonna do the same thing for all of our little shapes again. It's good practice because we're sort of painting a very similar shape over and over and over again. So by the time we get to the smaller pieces, you're gonna be really good at it. So here we're gonna do the same thing here. Again, I'm gonna go sort of into the middle of my cactus. And I'm gonna do heavy pressure to loose pressure. Again, on the top left.
And which brush are you using now, Jessie?
We are still on our number 10 round brush. And I said that before, you can use this round brush for basically anything, because you can use the very tip for fine detail. You can press down and put a lot of pressure for thicker lines. So I'm a big fan of this medium-sized round brush. This is one of my go-tos when I'm painting. Great. So we're still at number 10 round.
Okay, and some folks have been asking about the difference in the colors between the painting you're doing now and the example that you had before, like the main part of the cactus. And I think that just shows that you really can choose from what you have, and you can make it slightly different each time, right?
Absolutely. This painting is one of my designs from quite a while ago. This is something that I painted, this past year. So I was trying to recreate it, and I decided I was going to go for a brighter palette. So like I said, whatever greens you have at home, you just need a medium green, a lighter green, and a darker green to create this. So however you want your greens to be, you can do neon greens, or you can do really dark, pine tree colored greens. It's totally up to you. It's however you want your cactus to be.
So don't stress, folks. Use what you've got.
Yep, use what you've got. Like I said, I know it's difficult for some people to be getting supplies right now. So if you've got your stash of paint at home, whatever you've got will work. Even if you've got one green, like I said, you can add white to make it lighter. You can add just a touch of black to make it darker. And then you've got 3 greens. So I encourage you to paint along regardless of what you're able to get right now as far as supplies. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing. Again, we're just painting the highlights, and we have, like I just said, we've got our number 10 round brush, and we mix a little bit of our pistachio green with some wicker white to get this really pretty pale green. And we are, our light is coming down from the top left, so that's where our highlights are going to be on all of our shapes. And we are doing different amounts of pressure, so we started light and then heavy and then light again, and we're going to do the same thing for this little guy here. I'm going to go a little bit into my light green there. I'm going to go light pressure, heavier pressure, and then light. And you can see my lines sort of vary from cactus to cactus, or from a prickly pear shape to different shape. And that's fine because, no cactus is the same. It's nature, so everything is different. It's completely organic. You can't mess it up. That's the fun part about painting things like this. So we do the same thing here. So again, this is a little bit different than the others, but not really. We've got our shadow here, so our highlight's gonna be on the opposite end. So I'm gonna do light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure again to get that fun, bold highlight. And then the same thing here. This guy's a little opposite because he's going in a different direction. So where we have the shadow on the bottom. And if you think about it, if our light's coming in from up here, it won't really go down that whole way. That way, that part right there won't really be in highlight. It's mostly going to be this part here that's going to be shining with the highlight. So we're just going to keep it up there. We're going to still do the same thing, light, heavy, light. But we're just going to sort of keep our highlight up there because that's where it would be in real life. These highlights and shadows are sort of the only realistic part of this cactus. It's very bold and funky looking, but we're trying to keep it a little bit real. And the same thing for these little ones. So just a tiny little highlight there. We don't have much space, so we just want to make sure we get it in there. You don't want to ever forget about those little pieces when you're painting like this. If we were to ignore those, it would sort of take away from the reality of the painting, make it look a little less realistic. So it's always important to remember those details. So I'm just going to do a little highlight there too, and then a little guy right there, just to make sure we don't forget about those guys. Just a little brush stroke there. So now I'm going to clean off my brush.
So Jessie, somebody was saying that she can't really see her white over her green. Is that because maybe the green wasn't dry underneath and then it blended together, or what should we do?
She can't see the white over the green. Yeah, maybe if your green was not dry on your canvas, like John said, you might have been picking the paint back up with your brush. So if you're painting wet on wet, that can be a problem sometimes. That's why I try to sort of plan my painting so that I'm never really painting on a super wet area that's just been painted. So that might be why. So you can just hit it with a hairdryer and try again. You can touch it up a little if you need to. Or maybe you need to lighten your green a little. Maybe your mixture was a little too close to the pistachio color. So try adding another, little swipe of white to your light green color and mix that in. Because you want it to be pretty different. You want to make sure that these two colors here that are pistachio and then the color we've mixed, those should be pretty different so that they you can see them on your canvas. So try that, and hopefully that will help.
Great.
Okay, cool. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our light blue color. So at home, you might have light blue. I'm actually using Sky Mist tonight. We've got all kinds of colors going on, but any light blue will do. So if you've only got like a really dark blue or like a cobalt blue, if that's what you've got at home, use that and just add white. We just need to have any light blue for this part. As long as you've got, I say this sometimes in our paintings, if you've got red, blue, yellow, and white, you can paint any painting. You don't need black, you don't need brown, you don't need green, you don't need purple. All of those colors can be mixed. So you can mix this pink, you can mix the greens. If you've got red, yellow, blue, and white, you can paint anything. So if you got those colors, make sure you join in because you can make any of these colors with those. So now we've got our light blue color, and I'm still on my number 10 round brush. And we're gonna add another highlight just to keep adding that detail, because the more detail to me, the more finished a painting looks. So we are going to add this sort of fun blue highlight on top of these, on top of our light green highlight, just to give it another layer of dimension. So here I'm gonna add a little bit of this light blue color, again to my number 10 round. And I'm just gonna do a highlight right above where that light green one is. So I'm kinda gonna overlap it a little. So I'm gonna start with really light pressure, and I'm gonna press down and pull up again. And that just adds a really fun, modern detail to our painting. I'm just gonna add a little bit more. And we're gonna do that on top of all of the light green highlights that we've just made. So again, we're gonna do heavy pressure and then light pressure, and that's why we left a little bit of room between the edge of our cactuses and our highlight, so we could leave room for this little blue highlight. So I'm gonna do the same thing here, just right above that one. And then the same thing for this one up here. Light, heavy, light. Light, heavy, light. And then the same thing, we're just gonna go right above these little lines here, just really quick. Just using the very tip of our brush to get that detail, get that fine line. And that's it for our highlights.
Okay, is everyone doing okay? Everyone keeping up so far? It looks like people are getting it. They were very impressed with the way the highlights work and everything.
Well, good. I'm glad. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it.
Somebody said, what should I do for the blue highlight if my cactus is already blue? Well, I don't know.
That's a great question. I would challenge you to do a green highlight then, sort of.
There you go.
Switch it up a little. But really any light color. Like I said, this is not like a terribly realistic cactus. This is sort of funky and pop arty. So any light color will be great for your highlight. You could use pink or maybe orange or something purple maybe. That'll be fun. Just any sort of non-traditional color will just sort of make the painting look a little more funky. Which it sounds like yours is pretty funky already since you have a blue cactus.
That's right. But everyone is really enjoying, everyone's really enjoying the lesson and saying how clear it is for them to understand. So you're doing great, Jessie.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to do a little more mixing. So I'm going to grab my number 10 round brush. This is sort of my go-to brush, as you guys can see. We're just going to use this to mix a couple colors real quick. I'm going to grab some more of my fire coral, which mine's a little dry. You can see here it's sort of got a skin on it, so I don't want to use that. I want to put some fresh paint on my palette. That's just gonna, it's gonna end up being chunky, and we want it to be nice and smooth. So I'm gonna go next to it. That's like, again, this is the great thing about acrylic paints is that they dry so quickly, so you can keep painting on top of your paintings. But if you've got a fan going or something, they could dry on your palette. That's why I always add just a little bit of paint because I don't want to waste it. So I'm gonna grab some of this fire coral. I'm gonna put it down here. And then I'm going to mix in some classic green, or I'm sorry, some Clover green, which is our darkest green. I'm gonna mix those. And so if you're familiar with color theory, if you're a painter, if you're used to mixing colors, you sort of have an idea of where colors are on the color wheel. So of course, there's red, blue, and yellow are our primary colors. And then our secondary colors are green, orange, and purple. So across from the color, if you mix two colors that are across from each other, you will get brown every time. So sometimes you don't want brown, so you need to be careful when you're blending colors on your canvas that you don't mix those complementary colors together. But when you want brown, if you don't want to have too many colors, or if you don't have a brown bottle of paint near you, you can mix those colors together, and then you can get a nice, beautiful brown. So tonight we're going to be mixing our green and our pink, which is sort of like red. Pink is in the red family. So when we mix these two colors together, we're gonna get a brown color. So that's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna mix those together. You can see I've got a brown here. You see that brown there? And it's looking like a little bit of a reddish brown. So I'm gonna add some green. If you're mixing at home and it's looking more like a greenish brown, feel free to add some pink, which is, again, acting sort of as our red for this little color lesson. You can see, you see that nice brown color we've got there? We didn't even need to pull out a bottle of brown paint. We've got everything we need right here. That just goes to show you, if you've got the basic colors, that's all you need. So again, I'm gonna wash off this brush because I don't like having all that paint on my brush. Rinse that off nicely. And I'm going to grab this is one brush we haven't used yet, is our small liner brush, which I think is called our number 3 round brush in this pack. This is the fine sort of liner brush. It's sort of a little detail brush in our Craft Smart Super Value pack. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna rinse off that sizing again because we haven't used this one yet.
And Jessie, just one more repeat for folks. Which 2 colors did you use to make your brown?
Yeah, so to mix our brown, we used Clover and Fire Coral. So if you've got a green and a red at home, that's what we've mixed together. Fire Coral is, again, it's pink, but it's in the red family. It's just red mixed with white. That's acting as our red. And then green, they're crossing each other on the color wheel. So you mix them and you get brown. And
was it basically a 1-to-1 kind of ratio, sorry, to start?
We did 1 part Fire Coral and 1 part Clover. And like I said, if you're getting sort of a greenish brown, you can just add a little bit more Fire Coral. If you're getting sort of a reddish brown, you can add a little bit more of your Clover.
There you go.
Just want like sort of a nice, even, medium brown. So now that we've got that, we are gonna go ahead and we're gonna grab our number 3 round brush, which is this tiny detail brush we have in our set. And I'm gonna pick up just a little bit of this on the tip of my brush. So this brush is so tiny, you may need to pick up a little more paint than you normally would, just so we can, you know, get a little bit of a line going. So what we're going to do here is we are going to start painting the base of our spines. So all of our prickly little thorns, you can see we've got a little bit of texture here, and that's sort of what the spines are sort of poking out of or growing out of. I'm not really sure if spines grow or not, but that's what they're coming out of. So just a little bit of texture for the base of our thorns. So how we do that is all we do is we just do, here, I'll show you right here where it's a little bit lighter so you can see. You just do, we're gonna do like 3 or 4 little dabs. So watch, dab, 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 dab. You see how I did that? Super light, super easy. If you feel like maybe yours is looking a little bit too dark and you don't want that dark of a texture, you can add a little bit of white. I feel like mine's looking a little bit dark, so add a little bit of white and that'll lighten my brown color. So I have a nice like taupey tan color. And again, I'm gonna rinse my brush off because I just mixed with it. So I'm gonna do that over because I want it to be a little bit lighter. I don't like how dark that was. It's a little too intense for me. So dab, 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 right over it. So see what I did there? I just took that brown mixture, which was fire coral and clover, and I decided, I always change my mind halfway through paintings. Every single time I do it, I always, just based on how things are going, you just might need to change your plan a little. So I decided to add a little bit of white to that just to lighten on my brown so it wasn't so intense, because I don't want that to be the focus of our cactuses, like the little texture on the base of the spines. So we're gonna do this all over our cactus. So wherever you want there to be like a little prickly spine on your, or thorn on your cactus is where we're gonna do that little texture. So again, we're gonna go here, dab, 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 dab. So 3, 4, maybe 5 little just dabs, just little smushes. Don't think too hard about it. We're just gonna go randomly. And so however many of these you have is how many little thorns you're gonna have on your cactus. So just keep that in mind when you're making your little dabs. So again, we're just taking the tip of our brush and just dabbing together in a little bundle. And you can make them sort of even in a pattern, or you can make them totally random. It is up to you. On a cactus, you know, they do have a little bit of a pattern. If you look at a prickly pear, if you look at a photo of one, it almost looks like like nature has put them in a little bit of a pattern, but it's up to you. You can make them totally random. It's almost like a little bit of a grid sometimes. We're just doing our little texture right where our thorns are gonna be coming out of. So I'm gonna do it on my little guys too, because those guys will have thorns. Again, I'm just doing random. I'm just going dab, 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 in a little bundle, very randomly. Of course, I'm not going in the exact same spot because then it would look like this, dab, 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 dab. And we want it to be a little bit, you know, varied. Just a little grouping. I'll do some down here, dab, dab, dab. And we're going all over our cactus. We're going over the highlights and over the shadows, because the thorns, of course, be coming out of every part of the cactus, regardless of which part is in light and which part is in shadow. Dab, 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 dab. We're just tapping our little end of our tiny brush.
All the kids are loving the dab, 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 dab.
This is a fun part for sure. So dab, dab, dab. Super easy, super simple. Just a way to create a little bit of texture. And it'll just sort of make, when we go to paint our thorns on top, it'll make them pop a little bit too. It'll make them look a little more substantial. So again, I'm just going in a very random pattern. I don't want to forget about my little pieces up here, so I'm going to do a couple on each of those, because of course there would be thorns coming out of those as well. And if you're running out of this brown color, feel free to mix a little bit more. It was fire coral and clover, and then I did add a little bit of white when I was done. So fire coral, clover, and white is the mixture of our brown right now. I'm gonna clean off my brush. So that is the texture. You
switched to a smaller brush for the dabbing, right? Was the number 3?
It was our 3 round brush. And it was sort of the, I want to say it was the smallest. Yeah, it's the smallest of the round brushes in our Craft Smart Super Value Pack. So it's sort of like a nice little detail brush.
Great.
Yeah, that's what we use for that. Okay. So next, we're going to hang on to this brush. So don't spend too much time on that, because it's just a nice quick, the more you think about it, the more perfect it is, the less it'll look like a natural cactus. So of course you want it to be really sort of loose, because that's how a cactus would be in nature. It wouldn't all be perfect. They wouldn't all be lined up, you know, perfectly on your canvas. So don't spend too much time on that. Just do your little dabs, make it nice and random, make them nice and spaced out, and then just let it be. They're not going to be perfect, and that's okay. Okay, so I still have my number 3 round brush, and I've cleaned it, so it's nice and clean now. And so you can see I'm going like this with my brush because I like to keep that nice tip, so sometimes I use my fingers to make sure I have that nice pointed tip. And I'm going to use my light blue, and I still have light blue on my palette. If you need to add some more, feel free to add some more, or if yours has dried a little, you might want to put some fresh light blue. And I have just dipped the very tip of my brush in the light blue, and we're going to paint our thorns. So this is another really fun one. So the kids at home, I think, will like this. So we're going to paint all of our little spiky thorns. They look really sharp on there. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use a similar technique we've been using with the heavy pressure and the light pressure. And here, let's practice on our palette a little. We are going to use a flicking motion. So we're going to start at the base. I hope you guys can kind of see this. It's a very light color, so it might be tricky to see, but we're going to start at the base and say my fingernail is the base right here. We're going to do a flicking motion coming out of that. Very light and loose. I think you guys probably can't see that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you on my canvas. So I have one of my little textured areas here. I'm going to start there, and very lightly, I'm barely putting any pressure on my brush. I'm going to do a flicking motion coming out of there. Oh, that was a big one. That's okay. And you can see that looks like really spiky thorns. That's okay. I'm going to leave it because I like how it looks. It didn't mean for it to be that big, but we're going to have big thorns tonight, and that's okay. So do the same thing. And I'm kind of going to make them all going for each little area of texture. I'm going to make them going in the same direction. So I don't have to make them all going in one direction for every single one, but like for this bundle, they're all going to be going this way. For this bundle, then I'd be going that way. It'll just make your painting look a little more realistic because they've got these little bundles of thorns and they're all kind of jutting in different directions, but they're all sort of, the little clusters are jutting in the same direction, if that makes sense. So the same thing here, I'm going to go sort of out this time, flick, flick, flick. These are super fun to do, super easy. I'm going to go up this time, flick, flick, flick. And they look like little, like super sharp, prickly thorns. Do the same thing here. I'm going to go to the left maybe. Flick, flick, flick. I'm going to go maybe down this way. Flick, flick, flick. I'm going to be going in every direction because on a prickly pear, they just have these little thorny spines and they're totally random. They're kind of wild. But again, on each cluster, I'm going to kind of go in the same direction. And you can do 2 or 3. You can sort of make it varied. Here we go. Flick, flick, flick. And we're going to keep doing this for all of our little areas of texture that we've made with the brown. So when I do the ones on the side, I kind of like to make them going out because it just makes it look extra prickly, kind of like I did there. So just a little preference. I like how it kind of looks like it's really spiky. So flick, flick, flick. Maybe these will go this way. Flick, flick, flick. Just really wild spikes coming out of your cactus. It's a very sharp cactus. It's kind of like grass. Have you ever painted grass this way? It's like little blades of grass maybe. We're just doing a very light pressure and we're using a flicking motion. And again, we are using our number 3 round brush and we're using light blue. We should have a little bit on the tip of our brush to do these flicking motions. And it looks like really sharp little thorns. And this is just more detail that you're adding to your painting. The more detail, the better, I say. Whatever detail you can think to add, go ahead and add it because it's just going to make your painting look more realistic.
Absolutely. Everyone's having so much fun with the little flicking motion and putting their thorns on.
Good. I'm so glad. This is a really fun part of the painting. Yeah. The details are often my favorite part.
And we're almost done, right, Jessie? Because I know there are some folks that's getting late and
we are finishing up. Yep.
Yep, we're finishing up. And, you know, just a reminder that the complete class is available on Michael's website where you signed up for the class. You can see past classes as well. So please feel free to join in there. And thank you so much for the folks of you who have hung in with us this whole painting. I know a lot of people have been following along because I've been seeing your comments and we know people are painting. So be sure to share your finished painting with us at Plaid Crafts on Facebook. And we are really looking forward to seeing it. There's a lot of you guys out there painting along, and we're having a great time tonight.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, so again, you feel free to take your time and keep going with those little thorns, the little flicking motions. We are going to go to our little blooms that are on the top of our prickly pear shapes, these little flowers. And this is optional. You don't have to put the flowers if you don't want to. I just think it's a fun extra pop of color. So I'm going to be using Folk Art Acrylic Lavender, or if you've got eggplant or any sort of purple color. I'm going to put about a nickel-sized amount on my palette. And I'm going to grab my number 10 round brush. I'm going to pick some of this purple up. And again, we're going to be using, again, it's my favorite round brush. You guys know that. We're going to be using heavy and light pressure to create these flowers. So we're going to do this bottom right one first. So we're going to start, we're just going to be coming out from the center, and it's going to go like that sort of. You can see here. It sort of starts in the middle and then it goes out into the different petals. So we're going to go heavy pressure, starting at the bottom, pull up. Oh, not too much paint. Heavy pressure, pull up, heavy pressure, pull up. And this is a really quick, simple way to make some little flowers, some little blooms on the top of our cactus. You can use any color you want for this. I'm using purple because it, you know, sort of looks different than my background, but you can make blue flowers or pink flowers or orange flowers, yellow flowers. It's totally up to you. So again, we're going to do one up here. We're going to do heavy pressure, light pressure. This is sort of another flicking motion. It's kind of similar to our little thorns we just made, but with a bigger brush. So we get a bigger shape. Sort of spiky petals. Again, this is really loose. Heavy pressure, light pressure. Heavy pressure, light pressure. And I'm doing sort of 5, just like I like to make things sort of symmetrical. Doing about 5 petals on each. But you could even make them going all around if you want. I'm just making it so it sort of looks like it's sitting atop the cactus. So and then I'm going to do, so I've got 3 here on all of my biggest shapes. Oops. I'm going to do one more. It's going to be the last one on my little guy right here. I'm going to do a teeny tiny guy. Heavy pressure, light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. And that is the end of our cactus painting. So last but not least, please make sure you sign your work of art because I'm sure they're beautiful. I can't wait to get on tomorrow and see all of your paintings that you've shared with our hashtag Plaid Crafts. So you can use your small brush, you can use your number 3 brush and pick up one of the lighter colors, white or maybe one of the greens, and make sure that you sign your painting on the bottom so everybody knows your artwork. And that's it. That's for our cactus painting.
So we do have one last bit of business. I've got my scroll bar here and I'm just scrolling back through and I'm going to, here, I'm even going to close my eyes. I'm going to stop the scroll. And our winner is Helen Guerrero Castro.
Woo! Congratulations, Helen. That's
okay,
awesome.
So you can just message us. You can go to at Plaid Crafts on Facebook and send us a direct message, and that would be the easiest way for you to for us to get in touch so we can get your address and send you your prize.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope you had fun painting along with us tonight. Keep an eye out for more of these Let's Paint classes on the Michaels Community Classrooms. Please share your paintings with the hashtag Plaid Crafts. And again, thanks for sticking around with us. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you learned something, and we hope you were able to take a little bit of time to yourself tonight to relax and sort of unwind. So thanks again for joining us. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.